Welcome, guys, for the first live review of a race. I thought I'd just do a quick live one. If you've missed the Canadian sprint race, well, boy, I do feel sorry for you because that was an absolute cracker. Why do we not have Sprint Grand Prix at the Canadian Grand Prix every year? It was brilliant action from start to finish. And we'll start with the big story. The battle lines have been drawn between the two Mercedes pair, Kimi Antonelli and George Russell, because on lap 6, the action just got hot. And if you're in the UK, you're probably living in a bit of a heat wave at the moment, aren't we? And the barbecue wick really turned up in the Mercedes garage because, boy, that was tough racing. Let me know your thoughts on it. Was it fair? I don't think it was fair. That's my personal opinion. But let me know what you thought of it. Get in the comments. Did you think that was fair play from George Russell? He effectively, in my opinion at least, just closed the door on Kimi Antonelli, ran him off track at turn 2, and then Antonelli got another run at George Russell, but hit a bump. I thought he locked the brakes, which then he went off on the grass, and that let Lando Norris through. George again defending that one on the inside deep. Antonelli went even further on the inside, but hit a bump that time out rather than just locking a brake. And that was, I think he probably should have just held off there again. A little bit immaturity on that one, but he's 19 years of age. And boy, did he give Toto Wolff a bit of a rough time on his hands on the team radio, didn't he? 4 times Toto come and say, I've said it 4 times now, get your head down. Kimi Antonelli calling for a penalty. He was not holding back at all, was he? He was absolutely fuming. It's the first time you've seen that aggression and anger from the young man over the team radio. He's probably not had to do it in the last 3 races, has he? And well, he got Russell panicking a little bit. You bet he has, because that was really, really feisty, and he was unlucky that Norris snuck through there, because had he not, I think it would have been a brilliant battle throughout for the rest of the race. And was there a bit of tactics used from George? He knew that actually, and he conceded in interviews afterwards that I think Kimi had the faster car, it was faster of the two, and he effectively used Lando Norris as a little bit of a buffer, knew he had the pace in the car, and used Norris as a buffer to keep Antonelli back. And that was a big admission of surprising. Not many caught onto that comment, and I thought that was really interesting. That one came out from George Russell there. Norris confirmed almost the same as well, because he said the pace of the two Mercedes early doors, they were off and running. It was a Mercedes comfortable. They would have run by 10 seconds, said Lando Norris. But the pair got together, they fought, and they got lucky, he said, into a P2. And George sort of saying he used Norris and held him back. A bit of Carlos Sainz tactics going on there from George to keep Antonelli at bay, because he was flying, was Kimi. Which, and another point to come to that is going to show is qualifying is going to be massive coming up next for the race, because track position, despite there being opportunities to overtake, if you are in a bit of a train, you're not getting past, because Kimi was 3-4 tenths behind Lando Norris and never really got to that point where he was going to make a move. He did try it late on around the outside, similar to what he did in George Russell, but that time around he got clearly too much speed, wasn't going to make the second corner and went off. But crucially, the move with George, he had control of the car. He had made the second corner effectively ahead at the apex. And if you don't believe me, watch this. This is the apex. This is Kimi Antonelli on the outside, George Russell on the inside. And George Russell or Kimi Antonelli needs to be ahead of the front axle, which is the front axle of I don't know if you can see my cursor actually, but the front axle of the Mercedes of George Russell on the inside. Kimi Antonelli clearly ahead in that picture. The apex is probably just under the graphic, or where the graphic is of the live. And I'd say that's where the apex is for that corner. And Kimi Antonelli clearly ahead on the outside. That's what the rule states. If you're going to make a move on the outside, front axle needs to be ahead. If you're on the inside, you need to be level. And well, no steward's inquiry from the FIA, and George sort of referencing that, saying, look, well, if there was going to be a problem, the FIA would have looked at it. But we've seen the stewards before. When it's friendly fire, when it's team on team, very, very rarely do they step in. I think they've seen them do it once. And I thought that was harsh in the sense that there's so many times they let it go by. And I think that's why the Mercedes boys, Toto, very quickly on the radio saying, that's enough, Kimi. Get your head down. We'll talk about this after the race, because he didn't want a penalty for George Russell, because, well, it would have cost him the win, potentially. Because I don't see Russell would have given that position up. And well, he definitely wouldn't want to try to scamper it away if he could. But could he have? And that was the key question, really. We'll kind of never know what the true pace of that Mercedes was. At the beginning, it looked mighty fast. But then Lando Norris kind of really held his own. But then is that tactics and is that gamesmanship from Russell sort of saying, I kept him back, and actually that was all she wrote for the Mercedes, and Norris and McLaren can take comfort from that going into the race. They've got, if they look at the actual race, there might be a sniff for the McLarens and Lando Norris, especially because there'll be stops to consider. But one thing is for sure, track position is going to be key, because, the three were in a train. Antonelli, clearly the faster of the two cars ahead of him, just didn't have enough to make a move. And if you were, it was last of the late breakers, a bit like what we've seen with Oscar Piastri and Lewis Hamilton, because that was the other battle, a brilliant battle for P4. It was a great start from Lewis, nicked that fourth place of Oscar Piastri. It was 4, 5, and 6 with Charles Leclerc right behind Oscar. A bit of a gap then to Max Verstappen. He was in a little bit of no man's land. I'll get to them. It doesn't look promising for Max and Red Bull this weekend, but Lewis looked like for all the world he'd have fourth place, but then lap 20 he just clipped the wall of champions, got away with it, but then was sort of really struggling to hold on to his tyres. The McLaren's strength of keeping the tyres shone for Oscar Piastri, and he made a bold move around the outside into the final chicane. That put Lewis off track, and then he lost a position to Charles Leclerc on lap 21. But otherwise, it was a really promising race from the Ferraris. Charles Leclerc was saying he was much happier with his car, and actually said if we'd got into the top three, which he now thinks is possible for qualifying and the race, then a top three is on the cards for them. So mighty close, especially between the McLarens and the Ferraris. Mercedes are the team to beat still, but not quite as much as we initially thought. I think there's still 3 or 4 tenths that they've got potentially over one lap, especially when you look at the first 2 laps, the way that 2 Mercedes just romped away from Lando Norris. And was it really the battle between the two that got the McLarens back in with the fight? It looks that way. But it is going to be a massive, massive qualifying session in the battle between George Russell and Kimi Antonelli, because, well, I thought that was probably one of the best sprint races by a country mile. And like I've just shown you there with the X tweet, it was definitely a penalty, or should have been investigated. And that's the big surprise for me, why when it's team on team, the FIA aren't stepping in and penalising drivers. It's a race between the drivers, and they're almost looking at the teams to just sort this out amongst themselves. But something like that happens, I personally think the FIA need to step in. They need to stop looking at what colour car it is and just say, look at the incident on an individual basis and take a decision from there. The fact that it wasn't even investigated is what is the surprising thing. You had one driver clearly saying, "Look, that's a penalty," but they never even looked at it. And I think they bottled it a little bit. They didn't want to get into main headlines of title contender talk, fight up at the front, and they've made a decision. But worst they could have done is, or at the minimum they could have done is at least investigate it. Toto Wolff will be happy. He was sort of, saying, look, we need to... Didn't go quite as far as the papaya rules, but he said we need to lay some groundwork here and some framework in very Toto Wolff fashion. We'll lay some framework of how these drivers race. Surprised that's not kind of been done already, because, you know, the first few races we knew it was a Mercedes battle up at the front, and it's going to be them two teammates side by side. It's come to a head. Lucky for him, it's only in the sprint race and not a main race, and it's not more points dropped with Kimi Antonelli and Norris gaining that second place. There's more points obviously up for grab in the main race. But they'll stamp that out. And I kind of hope they don't, in a sense, go too far like the McLaren did with the papaya rules. And that's the next big thing, really, isn't it? We don't want that. We want them to just have clean racing action, much like what we see at Ferrari over the years. We've seen that with Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc, and we've seen it with Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc this season as well. Just clean, hard racing. Yes, please, we're all here for it. The Red Bull, Max Verstappen, just a country mile away, not really a threat. He was 6 or 7 seconds behind and not really troubling anyone, and he had a comfortable gap to Arvid Lindblad, who drove a fantastic race to get a P8. He's had a really, really solid start to the Canadian Grand Prix. He just hopes, and I pray that he could just keep that on into the main race or to the main qualifying session in just a few hours' time, and then into the main race and round off what would be a brilliant weekend for him. The other star of the show, and we've got to get to it, is Sergio Perez. What a drive from him. I've not seen the incident, sadly, with him and Liam Lawson, and why he got a 10-second penalty. He finished P11 in the race, but was given a 10-second penalty for forcing a driver off track. Yet to see that, to be honest, and I kind of wish that there was something that I did pick up on that, because that would be brilliant to see. But what a drive in that Cadillac. He's really, really shone so far this weekend. He's put Valtteri in the shade a little bit in a few races now, and really shown what a great driver he is, and he still got it, because that was fantastic. Finished 14th in the end, so be probably disappointed with a 10-second penalty. Can't say how bad or how harsh that is, but clearly not great. We don't want drivers driving well and then getting penalties. But yeah, that was the two main points, flash points in a brilliant sprint race. It was, you're on the edge of your seat throughout. And finally, we got the flashpoint with the Mercedes. And like I say, hopefully they take a book out of Ferrari's book for a change and don't interfere too much into how they go racing for the next part of the race. And luckily, we've still got one whole Grand Prix yet to go. We've got the qualifying session coming up yet next. That is going to be massive, because we've seen if you can keep that DRL, the boost train, not really a DRS train now, is it? You've got a good chance of keeping track position and keeping your place. That's why really Antonelli struggled to get past Lando Norris, because he was in the boost mode or boost gap of George Russell. And, well, if you do make a mistake, you can still get swamped. So there's still some opportunity there, as we've seen Oscar Piastri do on Lewis Hamilton. But it should be impressively exciting, because it's so close. It was meant to be, it's been drummed up as the one where, you know, George Russell is going to come here and dominate, but Kimi Antonelli is going to keep him honest, and it's getting hot, and I can't wait for the qualifying session coming up next. It should be brilliant. The grid, I can't wait to see how it lines up. Will we get another Mercedes top two? I wouldn't bet against it, because they've still clearly got 3 or 4 tenths on everybody behind them. and I don't think you can make that up in just setup changes. But they've also got to consider there is rain coming for the race, so something else for them to consider. And I think what's been good about this, the way this race has gone, is that despite there being a sprint race, we normally, or we've seen before, that it's like a prelude to the main race, and it's, oh, we're going to just see this again in the race. And yeah, what was the point? You've given the game away a little bit. I think it can be very, very different for the main race, just given that there's potential for weather changes, and you still can overtake, and you've still got to get the job done in qualifying next. But yeah, that was it. Quick thoughts on the sprint. Let me know your thoughts on the action with Antonelli and George Russell. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. That'll be massively appreciated. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Should George Russell have had a penalty for forcing Kimi Antonelli off track? The jury's out. I think I'm going to put my neck on the line. After seeing it a few times, there's absolutely no way it shouldn't have been investigated. Thanks for watching. See you soon for qualifying watch along.